Okay, so good morning, everyone. And let us continue this morning with the Nama Sutta on the various kinds of recollections called Anusatis in Pali. So we have been looking at the idea of recollecting the Buddha, and we have looked at how to do that, or how the Buddha recommends that we should do that, and kind of trying to draw out some of the details of that and what it actually means from a kind of practical perspective. So now we want to carry on with the sutta. We're going to look at the consequences of thinking about the Buddha in this way, and how that ties in with the meditation practice. This is what comes up next here. So let's see what the Buddha has to say. Speaking to Mahanama, he then says, when the noble disciple recollects the Buddha, their mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion. At that time, their mind is unswerving, based on the Buddha. A noble disciple whose mind is unswerving finds inspiration in the meaning and the teaching, finds joy connected with the teaching. When the joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, they feel bliss. And when they feel bliss, the mind becomes stilled. This is called a noble disciple who lives in balance among a people who are unbalanced, who lives untroubled among people who are troubled. They've entered the stream of the teaching and developed the recollection of the Buddha. So you will probably recognize this sequence straight away. The sequence of joy, then rapture, tranquility, bliss, and then samadhi or stillness. And this, of course, is exactly the same sequence that we have seen so far in the dependent liberation sequence we looked at before, the Chaitanya Karaniya Sutta, and very similar to what we find also in the Anapanasati Sutta. So we're here dealing with meditation and the cause that makes the meditation work, that gives rise to the bliss and gives rise to the joy, is this recollection of the Buddha. So we are kind of merging that recollection of the Buddha together with a meditation proper, like the breath meditation here. So this is kind of what is going on here. Maybe you can take the recollection of the Buddha also directly to a nimitta stage. I don't know. It might be possible, depending on how you use it. But I think normally you kind of use the two together would often be more powerful to give rise to the qualities that you are looking for, that you are, you see in the Anapanasati Sutta. So let's see what is going on here, how this actually works. So when a noble disciple, when you recollect the Buddha in this way, your mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion, lobha, dosa, moha. Lobha is basically just another way of talking about desire in the five sense world. That's what it refers to. Hate, dosa, is any kind of ill will. Hate is a very strong word, and I don't know if hate is really what it actually means. It means any kind of ill will. The problem is that there are so many Pali words around this topic of ill will or anger and etc. That you have to use different translations. But essentially it means ill will, any kind of ill will or anger. And delusion, and the moha is a delusion, but it's not exactly the same thing as avidya. Avidya is a deeper kind of delusion, whereas moha is a slightly more superficial kind of delusion, usually. For example, when it comes to making good or bad karma, if you make good karma is amoha, and if you make bad karma, it comes from moha. And of course, that cannot mean the full awakening experience, because it is possible to make good karma even though you're not fully awakened. So if moha means delusion, then you would expect the only person who has no delusion is the arahant, and so then only the arahant can make good karma. But that's obviously not the case. And so moha here cannot mean the full kind of ordinary delusion. It must mean something slightly less. And so sometimes I like to just translate it as confusion, for example, moha. So just to kind of keep the two different kinds of ignorance, or two different kinds of distortions of the mind, separate and more related to how they're used in the sutras. So why is your mind, why does it become free of these defilements when you recall the Buddha? And the answer is that the Buddha, what you are recollecting when you recall the Buddha, are spiritual qualities. It is the Dhamma that you're recollecting. Yeah, you at that moment you know what these things mean, and you have no interest in the worldly things because you're looking for something higher, and you understand that higher thing. That is the point of recalling Buddha. And so you call the Buddha, you understand the higher thing, your interest in the five sense world disappears. When your interest in the five sense world disappears, so does any kind of ill will or negativity you have, because that's usually related to that world. The same thing with confusion. You don't have any confusion at that point. There's no doubt or uncertainty about this. Yeah, this is kind of what it means to recall these things. And so your mind has that clarity. And that's why these defilements, they disappear when you recall the Buddha or the Dhamma for that matter, or the Sangha. We come into all of these things because they all focus on this higher reality, the higher understanding of what is truly meaningful. And if you understand what is truly meaningful, you have no interest in what is lesser. And that's kind of what is going on here. So all of these things are gone. And then your mind is said to be unswerving. The Pali word is ujju. Ujju means straight. It's directly related to the English word straight. Etymologically related. It's the same kind of base word that we are dealing with. So it doesn't kind of swerve to the left or to the right. It stays that middle course, yeah, which is, you could say, is the Noble Eightfold Path. In other words, talking about the Noble Eightfold Path, really. So it is unswerving or straight, based on that recollection of the Buddha, based on the realized one. A noble disciple whose mind is straight, because you are not interested in those worldly things, your mind is aspiring for the higher things, you find the inspiration in the meaning and the teaching. I mentioned these words before. These are the Atta Veda and Dhamma Veda. And this word Veda, I said before, is a word that combines two different ideas in the Pali language. Veda is the combination of the root which comes from Vijjati. Vijja is the idea again of insight or understanding. Yes, it has the insight aspect, the understanding aspect. And on the other hand, it also relates to Vedana, to feeling. So feeling and understanding coming together. And this is why I think inspiration is a very good word to translate this. You feel inspired. When you are inspired by something, it means you understand what is going on, but you also have an emotional relation to that. And this drives you on. You want to do things when you are inspired. Yeah, this is what inspiration does. Okay, I really want to get into this because I feel inspired by it. And so here, inspiration is good. Inspiration is what is meant, really. So Atta Veda, inspiration in the meaning here, Atta, has the meaning in the sense of the goal or the purpose or the aim of the practice. The Dhamma is the source. The Dhamma is what gives you the information and the understanding of what we are doing, what we're trying to do. And the Atta is the purpose of the Dhamma. It is where we are going. It is the goal of the practice. And so you understand the purpose of these teachings. You understand where it leads. And of course, that is going to be very inspiring because, you understand this actually gets me out of this mess. This leads to resolution of all of these problems, all of the things in life which actually are so difficult. This is the Atta here. And actually it goes even way beyond that. Most people have no idea where this path takes you, have no idea of the profundity of what actually is achievable in terms of meaning and bliss and these things go way beyond the ordinary human understanding and experience. And so that is kind of what is so extraordinary about it. And you start to get a feeling for that when you start to read the suttas and you start to see what the Buddha is talking about. So you understand the goal, the purpose, the aim of all of this. And when you understand the aim, you, of course, also understand the Dhamma. The Dhamma is the source of that goal, the things that makes that goal accessible to you through the teachings of the Buddha. So all of these things inspire you. And because it is emotional, because it has that emotional component, you find joy connected with the teachings. That's where the joy comes from. And then this whole process happens. So you reflect on the Buddha a little bit. Sometimes this is not necessarily easy to do, to find joy in the Buddha. This is a lot of people find this very hard because it's difficult to relate to the Buddha in the right way. So it is not necessarily easy. That's why there are 6 different recollections, and those 6 different ones, depending on your faculties, you will find some of them easier than others. But if it works, how do you do that? Well, you recollect the Buddha, you think about it, you see the suttas, you start to understand who the Buddha is, and then eventually there comes a point when all you have to do is just very gently bring up the perception of the Buddha, that he is there. You don't have to think a lot, because if you think a lot, it kind of destroys the meditation anyway. Just bringing up that perception. It's a reminder that the Buddha is your teacher, that you have access to all of these things. And that little kind of just bringing up that perception is enough for this whole process to unfold. And then you bring that in with you, with your, as I mentioned just before, with your breath meditation, or maybe even with your metta meditation, or with whatever, you bring that in, and then this process happens. From the joy comes the rapture, from the rapture comes the stillness, or the passaddhi, from the passaddhi comes the bliss, from the bliss comes the samadhi, and the whole thing arises out of this. And then you are called a noble disciple, or anyone who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced. Your mind reaches a certain kind of balance where you don't react to the world in this way and that way, and kind of, your mind is kind of even. It has a kind of upekkha to it. Balance here is sama. Sama is even, means even in Pali here. And sama and upekkha have a certain similarity to them. This is a kind of lower kind of upekkha, where the mind is kind of just even in life. It doesn't really kind of get thrown about so much. You live untroubled among people who are troubled. Life is troubling for many people, and difficult sometimes. You have entered the stream of the teaching, because you are a stream enterer. You have entered that stream, and you develop the recollection of the Buddha. Okay, so that is the Buddha Nusati and how it works. Ideally, this is kind of what we are trying to do. So see what you can, if you can make use of this in your own life. And again, if you find it too difficult and too complicated or too hard to kind of get that emotional uplift from this kind of recollection, the good news is that there are more recollections, and these are coming up next. So we're going to have a look next at the recollection of the Dhamma, the teachings. And there is a natural sequence here. The Buddha, recollection of the Buddha always comes first, because the Buddha arises. The Buddha arising in the world is the arising of right view. And the next thing then, of course, the Dhamma comes out of that. Without the Buddha, there is no Dhamma. So this sequence here is a very natural sequence. So let's see what the Buddha has to say about this. Furthermore, a noble disciple recollects the teaching, the Dhamma. The teaching is well explained by the Buddha, apparent in the present life, immediately effective, inviting inspection, relevant, so that sensible people can know it for themselves. When a noble disciple recollects the Dhamma, their mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion, or desire, ill will, and confusion, etc. This is called a noble disciple who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced. who lives untroubled among people who are troubled. They have entered the stream of the teaching and developed the recollection of the teaching. So that is the Dhamma for you. So the Dhamma arises out of the Buddha. The Dhamma is well explained. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandittiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko. Yeah, this is the standard way. The Buddha suggests that we should do the recollection of the Dhamma. This is what he says so many times in the suttas and the things that we chant all the time. And here is an opportunity now to actually to reflect a little bit more on what this means. And some of these things are really important, like, for example, the very first part here, Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching is well explained by the Buddha. This is kind of important to understand because the thing about the Buddha is that he is the first person to explain what the Dhamma is all about. And so he has to be very careful. He has to really reflect on what this actually means. Everyone who comes after, because the suttas already exist, can be a bit more haphazard in the way they explain the Dhamma. They don't have to be so systematic. They don't have to have the same clarity about it. But the Buddha is the first. So for him to explain this actually is very, very tricky. Again, remind yourself of what awakening is. Awakening is this kind of flash of understanding of the reality which changes you completely as a person. But it doesn't come with words. It doesn't come with a kind of, it's not articulated when the Buddha sees this. It's like, bang, this is a picture. And then you have to explain that. And that's an extraordinary feat, to be able to explain something which is so profound, or the things that are the most dear to human beings, like our sense of a self. And all of these things are completely annihilated. They don't exist anymore. The sense of self is completely gone. And you have to explain what this awakening means. And I think this is one of the reasons, obviously, why the Buddha was very reluctant to even teach initially, because he knew that the chances of people understanding this is virtually, well, he thought it was zero, but it turned out it wasn't exactly zero. It was slightly more than that. And that's why he was able to convince people that he actually had achieved something here. And so it's really hard, yeah. And people say that even just explaining a jhana experience, the really profound meditation, most people in the world, when you come to the jhanas, when you come to this non-dual awareness, which is the jhanas and the deep samadhis, most people say it's ineffable, can't be explained, right? Okay, so forget about getting an explanation, just experience it for yourself, no explanation. That's kind of really problematic. Just experience it for yourself, there is no explanation. Then how do you know that you even have anything remotely like the same experience? One person's non-duality, it might be someone else's completely different experience. Non-duality, what does it mean anyway? Do people really understand what is going on there? Or maybe if there is no explanation, even the word non-dual may not be used at all. It's just ineffable, right? And yeah, I know what you mean, it's ineffable, but actually completely different experience. This is kind of the problem with this sort of thing. So it matters enormously to try to verbalize this, to try to make it reasonably clear. And so that's why the Buddha, instead of saying it is ineffable, he comes up with jhana formulas. The formulas, the way he explains these things, is kind of unique in the history of the world. Everyone else says, oh, it's union with God, it's whatever, I don't know, it's really, really good stuff, but can't explain it to anyone. But the Buddha doesn't say that. He actually explains it in language that we can relate to. So this is kind of the trick. The trick is that even though they may be different from anything else you have had at any time, there is still some relation to our ordinary experiences, right? Everyone has had some experiences of joy and happiness in their life. Okay, these are also joy and happiness, except that they are on a completely different level. And so you have to kind of explain it in those languages. And I remember always, Ajahn Brahm always says that he's amazed at how anyone is able to come up with these jhana formulas, who explain these profound things with such clarity, things that are so outside of ordinary experience. He says it's amazing that the Buddha was able to come up with these things, because it actually is very, very difficult to explain a reality which is so different. And so it's svakato. This is what it means, that it's svakato. Yeah, the Buddha reflected on these things. He was sitting under the Bodhi tree for 7 days, experiencing the happiness of liberation, and probably also trying to articulate, think about what does this actually mean? How do I talk about these things? The Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the jhana formulas, the awakening experience itself. How is this formulated? And that obviously would have taken him a lot of time. Sometimes in the sutras you see the Buddha go on retreat. So why does the Buddha go on retreat? Well, probably just to kind of chillax and just kind of meditate, probably. That's probably part of it. But maybe also to kind of step back a little bit and to ask himself, can these teachings be articulated in a different way? Even the Buddha would have to take some time probably to come up with the right way of explaining the profound experiences that he had. And so this is svakato. It is carefully thought out. It is a very clear and logical system. It's a hierarchical path, gradual training, starting at a certain point, ending up somewhere else. Everything is very, very structured. Nothing in the Dhamma is unstructured. The 5 khandhas, the 5 aspects of personal existence, have a structure to them. It's not a random kind of group of 5. They come with a certain sequence. The 5 hindrances have a sequence to them. Everything has a structure. Nothing is really random. Keep that in mind when you read the sutras, because this helps you to give the tools of interpretation for understanding what is going on. When you understand that everything is structured, then you have a tool to help you to understand what this is about. So this is this is really important, because again, as I mentioned before, very commonly in the modern world, people will read and enjoy the teachings of various teachers. It is so beautiful. It is kind of well put together. It reads really nicely. There's a bit of poetry in there, and they bring in teaching from other teachers. A bit of kind of from Rumi. Rumi is one of these Islamic kind of sages. They bring in a bit from Christianity, and that makes it really nice and balanced, right? But actually, it is not, right? It is actually getting it out of balance, because it doesn't have the same profundity. Let's face it. That's the whole point of being a Buddhist, that you think it is more profound. If we try to kind of say everything goes on the same level, we lose the point about what this is about. That's really problematic. And so the Buddha's teaching is by far more consistent, far more profound, far more precise than any modern teacher. And we need to remember that, regardless of how enlightened they are. It doesn't matter if they're an arahant. The fact that we have the word of the Buddha means that everyone else can relax a little bit. We don't have to recreate the suttas or anything like that. Modern teachers, yes, they are there to inspire us, but that is because we have the suttas as the backdrop, as what really proclaims the real Dhamma as it actually is. And that's why modern teachers can do what they do, but they certainly don't replace the suttas. The suttas are the mainstay of what is the Dhamma. The Buddha says in the Pasadika Sutta very beautifully that the Dhamma is complete. There's nothing missing, nor is there anything superfluous. It means you cannot throw anything out, but nor do you actually need to add anything. And if nothing is missing, it means that actually you don't have to study the Abhidhamma in great detail, which is kind of nice, because Abhidhamma is very boring. So you don't have to worry about the boring stuff. Isn't that good? It's good, isn't it? I don't know, I think it's good. You can study the Abhidhamma if you like, but if you find it boring, you don't have to. That's kind of the nice thing about it. And so you come back to these things. It's not really required. Nothing is missing in the Dhamma. Nor is anything superfluous. You can't chuck things out. You can't kind of eliminate samma samadhi. You can't eliminate right aspects of right view. You can't just cherry pick what you think. You can't just think, these are ancient teachings. They are full of cultural baggage. Throw out the cultural baggage. Keep the essence. there isn't any much cultural baggage in these teachings. There's almost zero cultural baggage. They are just really the essence of wisdom. And so svakato means all of these things. It means that the Buddha, when he talks, he chooses his words with great care. He probably doesn't use any words that are not necessary. Every word is there for a reason. Okay, so you can argue that maybe the suttas we have now are not verbatim the same as they were when the Buddha gave them, and that is probably true. But still, yeah, sometimes it is pretty much verbatim the same. One of those kind of really interesting things is that if you look at the parallel suttas to the Pali in the Chinese agamas translated into Chinese, and you translate the Chinese into English, you translate the Pali into English, or you have facility with languages, you can read both ancient Chinese and you can also read Pali. There are people who can do that. Not many, but there are some people who can do that. I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. But if you can, the people like Venerable Analayo, for example, he can do this. And then you see that actually it is almost verbatim the same. Yeah, it is actually follows very, very, it's so close, you can barely make a distinction between the two. And that is extraordinary. The jhana formulas are, some of them are verbatim the same. And these are recensions of the Dhamma that have been apart for 2,200 years, 2,300 years, going back roughly to the time of Ashoka, when Buddhism was spreading very fast around India. That is when the root of the schools that became the schools of India, they were established at that time, those roots. The Sarvastivadins went to the north of India, and of course the Theravadins went to the south and to Sri Lanka, with Mahinda and Sanghamitra and all of that. And there seems to be a lot of evidence that part, or at least some evidence, that historical understanding is largely correct, that there was a spread of the Dhamma at that particular time. And so these things have been apart for 2,200 years, something like that. And they are still so close after 2,200 years. What does that mean? It means that most schools of Buddhism have been very conservative in the preservation of the Dhamma. They have been very careful. They have seen the word of the Buddha as sacred. And I think this is what sometimes scholars don't understand, scholars who kind of cast doubt on the authenticity of these teachings. They don't understand that the Sangha, especially, but the whole Buddhist community more broadly, see these teachings from the Buddha as special and sacred, and they have to be kept intact. Yeah, this is how we're always seeing these things. These are not things to be randomly changed according to your wishes, or to be added to just, because you feel that would be nice to add a verse here, and oh no, the Buddha got this phrasing a bit wrong, so let me change this a little bit. Yeah, that is not how Buddhists think. And I think this is the problem with some of these scholars. They don't understand the attitude to these teachings. And that is why we see the conservatism in this. And of course, if it has been that conservative over 2,200 years, that is only 200 or 300 years. Then further back, and then you come to the time of the Buddha, that conservatism probably existed in the Sangha from the very beginning. Yeah, so this is why I would say we have every reason to think that we have the essence of the word of the Buddha in the present day, even if the wording is not always exactly the same, because that is impossible. That just goes against the laws of impermanence, if for the wording to be exactly the same after 2,500 years. So the teachings are there, the Dhamma is still available, yeah, and that's kind of an amazing thing, yeah, that's kind of remarkable, and we can trust that modern finding, that is the case, modern finding of some people anyway, not everyone. So the teaching is well explained by the Buddha, a really important point right there. Then we have the idea, it is apparent in the present life, yeah, sandittika. Sandittika means basically visible. Ditta is to see, so it's visible. Yeah, so you can see it right now. Not have to wait till after you die or anything like that. Everything is available. Immediately effective, akalika. Akalika is basically a synonym for sandittika. It means you don't have to wait till some other time. Right now, the Dhamma is effective. And this is not only true in the sense that, yes, it is potentially possible to achieve a jhana right now. It is potentially possible to become awakened right now. But for some of you may say, oh yeah, that might be potentially possible, but it's not really realistic. And yes, sometimes that is true. Sometimes you have to practice this path. But the lesser aspects of the Dhamma are available right now. If you turn your mind right now in the right direction, you will immediately have some benefit. If you right now think in terms of compassion and metta, if right now you have a generous mindset, you shift the mind from something slightly worse to something slightly better, immediately you see the effect. So in that sense, it is immediately effective. And then if you keep on going, of course, then eventually you will also gain the greater benefits. There is a nice sutta about this idea of the Dhamma being immediately effective. And I don't know, I always like this sutta for some reason, because it has a bit of it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a Theravada koan almost. Usually Zen has koans, but Theravada sometimes also has this kind of enigmatic statements, especially when you go into the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, and the Buddha is talking to the deities, they're having a chat, and sometimes you get these enigmatic statements. Deities seem to enjoy kind of weird things, and kind of strange stuff. What is that saying that Bhante Sujata sometimes has, that the Devas love the hidden things or something like that, whatever it is. But that seems to be the case when you read the Devata Samyutta and Devaputta Samyutta. And in this one of these things, it's the Sammiddhi Sutta. Some of you may not have heard me talk about this sutta before, so I'll just very briefly tell you. This happens in the hot springs, which I recently visited in India, and I didn't have the same experience there as the monk Sammiddhi, fortunately, because it sounds a very dangerous experience. But this monk Sammiddhi is bathing in this hot springs, and he's just come out of the water, is kind of standing in one robe and kind of drying himself. And just as he's there drying himself, this Devata comes. Devata doesn't say whether it's a male or female, but it's kind of the whole situation really requires it to be a female, And so this Devata comes, and then this Devata says to this monk Sammiddhi, says, you are young, you're handsome. Now you're wasting your life on the spiritual practice when you could enjoy sensual pleasures. What are you doing? It's kind of interesting, right? You can see the kind of this obvious tension here. You can see whether that Devata is real or just in the mind of Sammiddhi or whatever. That's kind of irrelevant. The point is it sets up this tension, and this temptation is obviously there. And then this Devata says to this monk Sammiddhi, says, well, sensual pleasures, they are immediately available. You just have to go into town, enjoy yourself, find a nice girl and get married or whatever, and, there you are. Everything is kind of available. So, but whereas this Dhamma that you're trying to find, this Nibbana stuff, way in the future, you have no idea if it even exists. That takes a long time, and you're lucky to ever get there if you ever get there. And then the very interesting thing is that Sammiddhi replies to this Devata, he says, no, you got it all wrong. It is the other way around. It is sensual pleasures that are always in the future, and the Dhamma that is available here and now. And this is like a conundrum, How can that be the case? How can this be true? Because it sounds right what the Devata is saying. You're searching for this thing in the future, you don't know where, and surely sensual pleasures can be had now. We know that every time we go into to enjoy Radha's and Deepika's kind of meal over there, we know that sensual pleasures are available, right? That's very easily. So what is going on here? And, I remember I was saying this, and I was in Indonesia. I was in this town on Borneo, faraway town. It was called Balikpapan is the name of the town, and Balikpapan means under the plank. So the name of the town is Under the Plank. It's kind of a nice name for a town, I reckon. So Under the Plank town. That's probably some kind of story behind that. And so in Indonesia, it's very interesting. You go, there's usually very large audiences who come to listen to you. Hundreds of people come to listen to your Dhamma talks. And that's kind of nice. It gives a very different atmosphere when you have a large assembly like that. And so there was this young man sitting on the front bench very close to me, right? And so I said to the audience, well, who do you think is right? Is it Samidhi or the Devata that is right? And he said, yeah, the Devata is right, the Devata is right. That's what this young man said. It was very funny. The whole audience kind of erupted in laughter when he said that. It was really, really good fun. And that's what it seems like, right? Well, at first sight, it seems like the Devata is right. But the point is that the sensual pleasures of the world, they are always imbued with craving. Craving never really leaves you, yeah? While you're eating that nice food at the meal, you're kind of chewing one food and you're already looking at the next bite you're going to have. Craving is there while you're trying to enjoy the food. And that, paradoxically, is why you can't enjoy it properly. That's the paradox, yeah? You can't really enjoy it properly. That's why they say in the sutras, when you are rid of the craving, actually you enjoy the food more. You enjoy it just in a different, slightly different way, yeah? And so this is the thing about sensual pleasures. They are always in the future. They never really arrive because there's always craving that kind of comes with them. And because they never arrive, then you are always kind of seeking, running after it. Satisfaction never really comes. There's never that contentment there. Whereas the Dhamma, when you enjoy something in the Dhamma, like the peace of meditation or the joy of the watching the breath or whatever, it is satisfying in a very different way. It is satisfying precisely because craving is going away. The desire is disappearing. Yeah, when you are really peaceful, that by definition means the craving is not there. So it is immediately effective. Yeah, the Dhamma is enjoyable in the here and now. The Dhamma has not to do with the future in this way. And this is the path of the Dhamma all the way. It is like that. Every time you enjoy the Dhamma, even if just the act of generosity of being kind to somebody and feeling a bit of satisfaction, happiness because of that, that happiness you gain from being kind and generous has that quality of there being no craving coming with it. Yeah, it is a peaceful, satisfying kind of happiness, and it is different from the happinesses of the sensuality of the five senses in the world. And so, yes, Samidhi was right. The Devata had it wrong. And then later on, they go to the Buddha and they ask the Buddha. And of course, the Buddha basically reinforces what Samidhi said about these things. So this is the idea of the Dhamma being sandittika, being akalika. It is actually comes out quite nicely in that little sutta called the Samidhi Sutta. If you're interested in that sutta, it's found in the Samyutta Nikaya, the first Samyutta, which is called the Devata Samyutta, sutta number 20 in that sutta. That's where it is found. So then we have, carrying on here, inviting inspection. Ehi pasiko, ehi means come. Pasiko means like seeing, come and see, basically. Yeah, so this is like similar to being immediately effective and apparent in the present life. Come and see for yourself. Yeah, here it is available, check it out. And then as you start practicing these teachings, you get some results, you start to gain faith and confidence. And then when you gain a little bit of faith and confidence, that helps you practice more, brings more faith and confidence, you get more results, and then it kind of snowballs in that direction. Relevant, this is Opanayika, and this term is quite interesting, this term Opanayika. Relevant is is an interesting translation. There are a number of different translations. Bhikkhu Bodhi has applicable, yeah, it can be applied, it is relevant, it's ballpark, it's kind of similar ideas. An older translation that used to be, that was used by a number of people, including Bhikkhu Bodhi in the old days, was leading onwards. And that, the idea of leading onwards is more literally what this word means, Opanayika. Opanayika is the prefix upa plus nayaka. And nayaka means like to lead. It's like the Mahanayakas in Sri Lanka, the leaders of the Sangha, the various kind of sects in Sri Lanka, the Amarapura and the various kind of Nikayas, as they call them. So Nayaka means to lead. Upa means like towards or on or something like that, or to. So it means like leading to. And of course, Dhamma leading to what? Well, obviously towards Nibbana, towards happiness, away from suffering, all the things that the Dhamma is supposed to give rise to. That is what it is leading to. And this is kind of interesting, yeah, because what this means for us as spiritual practitioners is that it is the Dhamma that takes you to the destination of the Atta, the goal or the purpose of this. It is the Dhamma that leads you on. And so, in a sense, our job as Buddhists is to allow the Dhamma to work through us as much as possible, because the Dhamma is that takes you to the goal. Now, for a lot of people, they think, yeah, I am going to make this path work. Yeah, this is my job, I. And you see the I getting into the equation. We are trying to do the path. And that is exactly what this is saying we should not do. It is not you doing the path. It is the Dhamma doing the path. If it was you doing the path, you'd be enlightened a long time ago, right? You wouldn't need any Dhamma or Buddha, anything like that. You would just kind of happen naturally as part of life, because that's kind of where we are at with the I and all of these kind of things. So our job is to get that I out of the way as much as possible, doing, not coming from me, but coming from the suttas, coming from how the Buddha explains the world. Allow your conduct to be an expression of the Dhamma without the I, without the defilements getting in the way. That is the ideal way. And if you do it that way, it becomes quite easy. Yeah, it just unfolds by itself. You don't have to push, you don't have to use this I, which is this ego, which is actually so painful and fragile and always needs to be supported and kind of tries to get involved in things and can't really do it because it doesn't understand. It is by definition the ego is wrong view. And so you have wrong view when you have the ego. So the whole thing is kind of biased from the beginning. So get that I out of it. Allow the Dhamma to express itself through you. And when you do that, then the path becomes easy. Not the self, not the defilements, but the Dhamma is actually what leads you on this path. So, if you come to meditation practice, for example, this is where the idea of just sitting back and waiting for the meditation to happen comes from, because the Dhamma is there. The Dhamma leads you on in the meditation. And so you don't do the meditation. The meditation happens when you get out of the way. When you sit back, you wait, and then the Dhamma starts to express itself. You are the passenger on the train, watching the Dhamma unfold within you. That is what is going on. This becomes a very nice way of meditating, a very nice way of allowing the Noble Eightfold Path to express itself. And you may think this sounds nice, but it's too idealistic. How can this possibly be done? Yeah, we have senses of self. The self always comes out. So how can we possibly do this? And the way to do this is twofold. And the first thing, the reason why this works is because you have right view. The more right view you have, right view means that your mind inclines in the right direction. That's what it means. That's why every one of you are here, because you have right view to some extent. Otherwise, you wouldn't bother coming to this sort of event. Yeah. So you have already an idea of what is right in the world. And the more right view you have, the more automatic the path becomes. And this is why right view is so important on the spiritual path, and investigating this idea of right view, purifying that, making it more clear, reflecting on what the Buddha was talking about, so that you internalize that right view and you make it your own. You know this is true. Okay, now allow it to express itself. So the more right view you have, the less the ego gets involved, because it happens automatically. This is one idea, and so that's why it is important to understand these teachings, to reflect on them again and again. Another way of allowing the Dhamma to express itself through you is through going a bit slowly in life, having more mindfulness, stopping up. Okay, you're about to do something or say something. Okay, wait. What does the Dhamma say about this? I can feel I'm coming from ego and defilements now. Okay, hold on for a minute and see if I can feel something deeper. Wait for the Dhamma to come to the surface, because all of you have the Dhamma there. You know what is right, you know what is wrong, and sometimes you just have to stop to allow the Dhamma to manifest. And this is kind of what mindfulness does to you in your daily life. No, don't talk now. I can feel this doesn't seem right. Yeah? Don't allow that compelling feeling, the compulsion inside that says I must act straight away. Don't believe that because it's wrong. You don't have to say something straight away. Ill will, defilements are very compelling. They compel you to act. Don't believe them. Stop, wait, allow the Dhamma to manifest in your mind, then follow the Dhamma. It's like an intuition that is always there behind the facade. You know what it is, what it feels like. And then you start to kind of live in a more meaningful way and following the deeper thing inside of you that you know is true. So these two things coming together, the right view is what allows that intuition to be powerful. And then the mindfulness allows you to follow that right view through that intuition as you live your life. And then as your practice becomes more and more established, all of these things kind of come together more and more and more. That intuition becomes stronger, the mindfulness becomes stronger. You don't even have it to be mindfulness so much anymore because you know the danger. So whenever there is a danger, your mindfulness just arises. Just like you're about to cross a road, you don't need to say, be mindful of the cars. You're automatically mindful because you know otherwise you will die. And in the same way, you are automatically mindful because you know these are dangerous things. And so mindfulness comes about. So this is the idea to me of Opanayika. The Dhamma leads you on, not something else, not you. That is the ideal. In reality, it's a bit more complicated because the sense of self is always there. And so in reality, it will be a mix of things, Sometimes the self will say, be kind. Okay, that's fine, go with that. Because, it's better to have a sense of self that says, be kind, rather than a sense of self that says, get on in the world and it doesn't matter if other people hurt or whatever. I mean, obviously that is better. So you use that, positive sense of self, right? And to some extent, but then you also try to listen to the deeper truth within you coming from the Dhamma. And then over time, it gradually shifts. It shifts away from the sense of self, more and more towards the Dhamma and towards the right view that gradually gets embedded within you. This is how this works. Okay, so that is the idea of Opanayika. And then last one here, so that sensible people can know it for themselves. The Dhamma is such that you have to be sensible, unfortunately, to know it. If you're not sensible, vinyu is the Pali word. Vinyu means like wise, or sensible is a nice word. So this is kind of the definition of sensibility in Buddhism, is that you understand what is beneficial for yourself and others, and you have an attraction to the Dhamma, basically. Sensible people can know it for themselves. So this is the Dhamma for you. I remember, when was it? We had this. We had the launch of the suttas. Was that last year, Deepika? Yes, okay, I've forgotten already when it was. We had the launch of the suttas, and it was very nice at the State Library in New South Wales. This time last year, exactly. That's what I thought it was. But I these days I kind of get confused with all kind of things. Maybe this is the sign of the end coming. Actually, So, and that was a really nice event. I really enjoyed that, and it had a kind of suitable, this kind of grand colonial building with high ceilings, a beautiful place, the State Library of New South Wales. And Jeff Gallup was there, the ex-premier of, and it had a feeling to it that was very apt because we were launching the suttas. The suttas deserve something special, I thought, and that was exactly what was going on there. And I was thinking that, when we were there, and I think I said that even because I had to talk a little bit while I was there. And I said that this is the most important literature in Australian history here. This is the most important thing here. But of course, it's not really the most important literature in Australian history. It is the most important literature in the history of the world, right? That is really what is the truth of this. So I was kind of underestimating a bit. But because the audience was mostly kind of people of Australian background, I thought kind of that was more apt maybe. But for the whole world, really, it is the most important literature. There's nothing like the sutras. Yeah, people usually they kind of praise all kind of literature like Shakespeare and Dante and Confucius or whatever it is, and all of those things, of course, are probably great literature, and they probably have a lot of insight into human psychology and our understanding of the world, and a lot of beneficial things in there. But still, regardless of how beneficial it is, and regardless of how useful it can be, it all pales in significance to the sutras. The sutras are the highest expression of what is beneficial for human beings. Nothing kind of comes to this level. So this is kind of the sort of way we need to think about this literature. And it is kind of wisdom distilled. In most literature in the world, it's like a mixture of entertainment and a bit of wisdom. Like Shakespeare are plays, it's supposed to be entertainment, and people praise it. But there's not much entertainment in the sutras. The sutras are like this, just pure, almost like pure wisdom distilled. And of course, that is what we should be looking for, because when it is distilled pure wisdom, there's no distraction. There's nothing to take your mind kind of away. Occasionally, there are little stories to distract you a little bit, but this is really kind of takes the core of the most powerful wisdom in the world, distills it into 10,000 pages or whatever it is, the four Nikayas, and then that is the Dhamma for you. So this is kind of how to think about this Dhamma, as something, as the highest expression of wisdom in the world. And that is what we still have. And you have access to that. This is taught for our benefit. The Buddha gave this to the world. This is the gift of the Buddha to the world. This is the greatest gift that one human being can give to another. You have been given the greatest gift by someone else. This is one of the reasons kind of we bow down to the Buddha. Thank you for giving this to the world. Thank you for going out of your way to teach this for 45 years, even though for the Buddha, it was probably more of a hassle than, he'd probably rather do something else, but he did it for our benefit. In purity, out of compassion, out to help everyone in the world because he understands the suffering. Thank you so much. Then that is the right kind of attitude. So anyway, I think that's a good place to stop for now. So please carry on enjoying yourself, and we'll see you again at 3 o'clock this afternoon.